8 cursed places in Scotland so ancient, locals have refused to enter for thousands of years. Could a place be so old, so steeped in something unseen, that even time itself recoils? Imagine standing on ground where life has ebbed and flowed for millennia, where echoes of forgotten people still whisper on the wind. Scotland, a land of mist and legend, holds secrets buried deeper than any tomb. These aren't just historical sites, they are places where the veil between worlds feels thin, where the very air hums with an ancient, unsettling energy. Places so profound, so profoundly, that the people who live closest to them simply stay away. Why? What happened here, long before history was written, that continues to cast a shadow over the present? What forces were at play that still make the bravest souls pause and turn back? We are about to journey to 8 such locations, and I promise you, by the end, you'll understand why these places remain untouched, unvisited, and utterly, chillingly, cursed. Our journey begins with a place that was already ancient when Julius Caesar was a mere boy. This is Scar Bray, on the Orkney Islands. Say it with me, Scar Bray. It's not a pile of stones, not a crumbled tower. No, Scar Bray is a complete village. Imagine this: stone beds where people slept, stone shelves where they kept their belongings, stone hearths where they cooked their meals. All perfectly intact. This village was built and lived in by real people, 5,000 years ago. Think about that for a moment. 5,000 years. When the Egyptians were just starting to lay the first stones of the Great Pyramid, Scar Bray was already old. It predates Stonehenge. It was thriving before the Bronze Age even began. For 700 years, from around 3180 BC to 2500 BC, a community lived here, right on the coast of Orkney. They ate, they slept, they lived their lives. And then, as if they simply walked out the door one afternoon, they were gone. The village lay hidden, buried by sand dunes, until a ferocious storm in 1850 stripped the sand away, revealing everything. Everything preserved, as if frozen in time. But here's the chilling part, the part that makes your skin prickle. Why? Why would a community, living in a place so well built and preserved, simply vanish? Modern archaeology suggests a gradual abandonment, a slow migration as the coastline eroded and the land became less fertile. But the belongings left behind, that's what nobody can quite explain. Tools they would have needed for daily life. Beautiful jewelry, carved objects of clear value, left sitting on shelves, on beds. It's as if they didn't plan to leave, as if something took them. Orkney locals have always treated Scar Bray with a quiet unease. Not outright fear, but something deeper. A feeling you get when you walk into a room and you just someone was there moments before. A presence that lingers, even in the absence. Does that make you wonder what truly happened on that ancient coast? Next, we venture to the Isle of Lewis, to a place called the Callanish Standing Stones. In Scottish Gaelic, it's Tursacan Challanish, but we know it as Callanish. These stones were erected around 2750 BC. That's 4,750 years ago. They predate the main stone circle phase of Stonehenge by centuries. The central stone, a magnificent monolith, stands almost 5 meters tall and weighs around 7 tons. Around it, 13 other stones form a circle, with 5 rows of standing stones stretching outwards, creating a shape like a cross from above. These stones aren't just any rocks. They are made from Lewisian gneiss, one of the oldest rock formations on Earth. The rock itself is 3 billion years old. The people who built Callanish chose a material that had existed long before complex life walked this planet. They aligned the site with the movements of the southern moon. On certain nights, roughly every 18.5 years, the moon appears to skim the horizon and rise directly over the central monolith. This wasn't accidental. It was engineered with incredible precision, without any modern instruments. Then, around 800 BC, the site was abandoned, and the land itself seemed to claim it back. Peat accumulated over centuries, burying the stones completely, layer upon layer, until 1.5 meters of earth covered them. They were hidden for almost 3,000 years. The peat was cleared in 1857, revealing the stones in their full height for the first time in millennia. But local legends, dating back to the 17th century, call these stones Fear Braig, the false men. Giants, they say, who refused to convert to Christianity and were turned to stone as a punishment. Another tradition speaks of a figure called the Shining One who walks the stone avenue on midsummer morning, announced only by the call of a cuckoo. But here's the part that sends a shiver down your spine. Nobody goes to Callanish at night. That's not a legend. That's a simple, undeniable fact for the locals. They simply do not go there after dark. Why do you think they avoid it so fiercely, even with all the historical and astronomical marvels? What unseen force keeps them away from these ancient giants? Our third stop takes us to Glamis Castle, in Angus. The name is pronounced Glams, the L and S silent. The Leon family has held Glamis since 1372, but the castle's darker history begins much earlier. In 1034, King Malcolm II was brought here after being mortally wounded in battle. He died within these walls, his blood reportedly soaking into the floor of a chamber that still exists today. But the story that truly unsettles people, the one that defines Glamis, isn't Malcolm. It's Janet Douglas, Lady Glamis. In 1537, she was arrested on charges of witchcraft, charges that were almost certainly fabricated. King James V held a deep personal grudge against the Douglas family, and Janet was a Douglas by birth. She was convicted, burned at the stake in Edinburgh. Her ghost, the White Lady, is said to hover above the castle clock tower. And in the castle chapel, one seat is kept permanently vacant. It's called Lady Glamis Seat. It's been empty for nearly 500 years. Then there's the monster of Glamis. Now, it's important to state, this is a story, a legend. It claims that somewhere within the castle walls, there is a sealed room. A room that doesn't appear on any floor plan. A room that cannot be located from the outside. When guests once tried to find it by hanging towels from every visible window, they found windows with no towels. Windows that belonged to no room anyone could enter. The legend says a hideously deformed child was born to the family and walled up, hidden away. The earliest written reference to this appears in 1908. No physical evidence has ever confirmed it. But the verified history alone is enough to make you feel uneasy. The unverified history, however, is what truly keeps people awake on the drive home. Imagine that. A hidden room, a secret within secrets, in a castle that has stood for centuries. What could possibly be hidden away in such a place for so long? Doesn't that thought alone make your imagination run wild? Now, let's step into a graveyard that has a reputation all its own. Greyfriars Kirkyard in Edinburgh. Kirkyard is the Scots word for churchyard. This kirkyard was established in 1561 and served as Edinburgh's primary burial ground for over a century. But in June 1679, it became something else entirely. Following the Battle of Bothwell Bridge, about 1,200 Covenanter prisoners were marched to Edinburgh. These were supporters of the National Covenant, a religious and political movement that had resisted the reforms of King Charles II. They had lost the battle, and they were prisoners of the Crown. Around 400 of them were held in an open field within Greyfriars Kirkyard for 5 long months. No propeshalte. Minimal food. A Scottish autumn turning into a Scottish winter. Many died of exposure and starvation. Those who survived were transported to the colonies as effectively slave labour. The man responsible for their brutal treatment? Sir George Mackenzie, Lord Advocate of Scotland. He earned the grim nickname Bloody Mackenzie. When he died in 1691, he was entombed in a black mausoleum, just 50 yards from the prison field where he had left those people to die. In 1999, a homeless man broke into the mausoleum, seeking shelter. Shortly after that, reports of strange physical incidents at the site began. Local ghost tour operators, like the City of the Dead tours, have documented over 450 reported incidents attributed to what they call the Mackenzie poltergeist. Now, these figures come from tour company records, not independent scientific verification. That distinction is important. What is verified is the history. 400 people left to die in an open field, their jailer buried yards away. A sealed tomb that someone broke into in the middle of the night. Whether or not anything came out of that tomb, the history alone is sufficient to make this ground feel different. Most visitors report it immediately. Can you imagine the sheer despair, the lingering anger, that must saturate a place like that? Does the weight of so much suffering ever truly leave a place? Our fifth location is Dunnottar Castle, on the Aberdeenshire coast, pronounced Dunnottar, with the emphasis on the middle syllable. The rock on which Dunnottar Castle stands is 440 million years old. It was forced to the surface of the Earth during the Silurian period, a time when the cementing matter holding it together was so dense that geological faults didn't go around the pebbles within it. They passed directly through them. Carbon dating by the University of Aberdeen has confirmed evidence of Pictish habitation on this rock, dating to the 3rd and 4th centuries AD. This makes it the oldest confirmed Pictish fort ever discovered. The site had been a human stronghold for at least 1700 years before the castle was even built. In 900 AD, King Donald II of Scotland was killed here by Viking forces. In 1297, William Wallace seized the English garrison at Dunnottar and had them burned inside the church. In 1651, the Scottish crown jewels, the honours of Scotland, were smuggled into Dunnottar ahead of Cromwell's advancing parliamentary army. They were hidden within its walls for nearly a year before being smuggled out, concealed beneath a servant woman's clothing, and buried in a nearby church, where they remained hidden for over a decade. But it's 1685 that defines Dunnottar's darkest chapter. 167 Covenanters, men and women, were locked into the castle's cellar vault. The Whigs Vault, 52 feet long, 15 feet wide, with no light and barely any air. They were held there because they refused to renounce their religious convictions, under the orders of King Charles II. Some died of illness inside the vault. Some attempted to escape by climbing down the sea cliffs, 160 feet of sheer rock above the North Sea. Several fell. Their names are recorded. Their deaths are recorded. The vault still exists. When you stand inside it today, the ceiling is low enough to touch. The walls are close enough to feel. 167 people lived and died in that space. Some visitors cannot stay in it for more than 30 seconds. Not because of anything supernatural, but because of what is completely, verifiably real. Imagine being trapped in that suffocating darkness, your faith your only solace, knowing death was all around you. Can you picture the sheer terror and desperation of those souls? We now turn our attention to the Flannan Isles Lighthouse, on Eilean Moor, in the Outer Hebrides. Eilean Moor means the Big Island. The lighthouse was completed in 1899, built to warn ships away from one of the most treacherous stretches of water around the British coastline. 3 experienced keepers were assigned to it: James Duckett, the principal lightkeeper, Thomas Marshall, the assistant lightkeeper, and Donald MacArthur, an occasional keeper. On the 15th of December, 1900, the light went dark. The passing steamer Arch Tor noted it from the sea. Nobody reached the island until the 26th of December, 11 days after the light failed. The relief vessel Hesperus arrived at Eilean Moor. All 3 men were gone. There was no distress signal sent. No sign of struggle inside the lighthouse. The beds were unmade. One keeper had left without his oilskin coat, in the middle of a North Atlantic December. The clock had wound down. The last log entry was dated the 15th. At the West Landing, the damage was extraordinary. A metal box fixed 33 meters above sea level had been torn open. Iron railings had been bent. A rock weighing over a ton had been displaced from its position. Turf had been ripped up 10 meters back from the cliff edge, at 60 meters above sea level. The official inquiry, led by Robert Muirhead, concluded the most probable cause was a rogue wave catching 2 of the men on the landing during a storm, with the third rushing out without his coat to help, and all 3 being swept into the sea. Now, a specific correction that matters. The famous log entries in which the keepers allegedly wrote of weeping, praying, and a strange storm that could not be explained are fictional. They were added by a 1912 poem. The real log entries are routine, factual, and stop on the 15th of December, without drama. Similarly, the story of the uneaten meal waiting on the table has been confirmed as a later embellishment, not in the original account of the reliever who first entered the lighthouse. The real facts require no embellishment. 3 experienced men, 1 lighthouse on a rock in the North Atlantic. No bodies recovered, no explanation that accounts for every detail. The lighthouse is automated now. Nobody lives on Eilean Moor. The island has been uninhabited since 1900. The last 3 people who stayed there never came back. Doesn't that complete disappearance, with the signs of immense, inexplicable forces at play, fill you with a sense of dread? What could possibly unleash such power on that lonely rock? Our next stop is Glencoe, in the Scottish Islands. The emphasis is on the second syllable, Glencoe. On the 13th of February, 1692, at 5 in the morning, soldiers under the command of Captain Robert Campbell of Glenlyon drew their weapons on the people who had sheltered them. The soldiers had been guests of Clan MacDonald of Glencoe for 12 days. They had eaten at their tables, slept in their homes, accepted their hospitality, all under the strict rules of Highland custom, which placed the safety of a guest above almost any other obligation. The order had come from King William III himself, signed with the instruction to put all to the sword under 70. The MacDonalds had technically missed the deadline to swear an oath of allegiance to the crown. Their chief, Alastair Mackian, had arrived at Inverary on the 6th of January instead of the 1st, delayed by severe weather and having been sent to the wrong location initially. The paperwork recording his late oath was deliberately withheld from Edinburgh by officials who wanted the clan destroyed. Regardless, 38 MacDonald men were killed in their homes and in the snow outside them. A further 40 women, children, and the elderly fled into the mountains. It was February in the Scottish Highlands. Most of them did not survive the exposure. The Scottish Parliament later condemned the event as murder under trust, a specific legal designation under Scots law that recognised the killing of people who had extended their protection to you as a form of treason. It was considered more serious than ordinary murder. The Glen today is quiet. Unnaturally quiet. Visitors note it repeatedly. The mountains close in on both sides of the road. In winter, when the light drops early and the snow covers the heather, the silence in Glencoe is not the silence of an empty place. It is the silence of a place that remembers. Can you feel that profound, heavy silence? It's the sound of betrayal, of hospitality shattered, of lives extinguished in the most brutal way. What does it mean for a place to hold such a memory? Finally, we arrive at Culloden battlefield, near Inverness. The 16th of April, 1746. It lasted between 40 and 60 minutes. When it was over, a way of life that had existed in the Scottish Highlands for centuries was finished. The Jacobite Highland Army, fighting to restore the Stuart claim to the British throne, faced government forces under the Duke of Cumberland. The ground chosen for the battle was flat, open moorland, entirely unsuited to the Highland charge, which was the Jacobite army's primary tactic. The Jacobite commanders knew this. They had argued for a different position. They were overruled. Between 1,500 and 2,000 Jacobite Highlanders were killed. Many of them cut down while retreating or hunted across the moor in the hours following the battle. Government forces suffered approximately 50 killed and 250 to 300 wounded. The Duke of Cumberland did not stop at the battle's end. His forces moved across the moor, killing wounded Highlanders where they found them. He earned the name Butcher Cumberland. The name has followed him through history ever since. What followed Culloden was systematic. The Dress Act of 1746 banned Highland dress, the wearing of tartan, kilts, and plaids for civilian Scots. The Disarming Act stripped the clans of weapons. The clan structure itself, the system of loyalty and kinship that had defined Highland life, was deliberately broken apart by law. The clan graves on the moor are still marked. Stone markers bearing the clan names: MacDonald, Cameron, Fraser, MacLachlan. The National Trust for Scotland maintains the battlefield. Visitors who come on the 16th of April, the anniversary, report a specific heaviness to the air on that date above all others. Reports of sounds, battle cries, weeping, are concentrated around the anniversary. Whether those reports are experience or expectation, the moor on that date draws people who want to bear witness. There are accounts dating to a 1911 newspaper report of apparitions seen on the moor. Local dogs reportedly refuse to walk near the clan grave markers. These details are reported consistently and consistently resisted by people who have not stood on that moor. In the early morning of the 16th of April, in under 1 hour, on one cold morning in April, a culture was ended on this ground. The moor absorbed every moment of it, and it has not let go. 8 places. A stone village abandoned so gradually that nobody can explain why the belongings were left behind. A stone circle built when giants still walked through Highland legend. A castle with a sealed room on no floor plan and a chair kept empty for 5 centuries. A kirkyard where 400 people were left to die in the open air, and their jailer buried 50 yards away. A sea cliff vault where 167 people were locked in darkness for their beliefs. A lighthouse rock where 3 experienced men vanished without a body or a final word. A glen where 12 nights of hospitality ended with blades drawn at 5 in the morning. And a moor that absorbed the end of an entire way of life in under an hour. Scotland does not need to exaggerate. The ground does that on its own. Now, one thing before you go. This video was different for us behind the scenes. We put serious work into the voiceover this time. The pacing, the pronunciation, the delivery, every place name, every pause, genuinely worked on. We would like to know if you noticed. Compare this one to our previous video and tell us honestly in the comments whether the voice feels different, better, worse, or somewhere in between. Your feedback is not just appreciated, it is how this channel gets sharper with every single upload. If you have stood in any of these places, Glencoe, Culloden, Callanish, anywhere on this list, Tell us what you experienced in the comments. Not what you expected to feel, but what you actually felt when you were there. Subscribe, because the next one is worse.